What an absolutely ridiculous mess.
Watch the rain as it's falling down.
Greetings, lovely people, and welcome to my annual Doctor Who video, because, well, actually, no, I did more than one last year, so I guess we're about due. But, yeah, when I last spoke to you about Doctor Who, it was due to the fact that after the Reality War, everything had kind of fallen apart. We obviously had all this stuff about Billie Piper, who potentially is the Doctor, or maybe not. We'll never really know, it seems. But yeah, since then, and by that I mean in the last few days, literally yesterday, in fact, time has gone 500 miles an hour over the last 24 hours for me. We had the official announcement that Doctor Who is over. And yeah, we got an update directly from DoctorWho.tv, an update on the future of Doctor Who, which reads, "Today we're announcing an update on plans for the future of Doctor Who. As part of securing the next phase of the show for future generations, and in line with the BBC's charter and agreement requirements, the BBC will put Doctor Who out to competitive tender this year. Doctor Who remains an important part of the BBC, and this tender underpins the BBC's continued commitment to Doctor Who, ensuring audiences will enjoy the show for years to come. After careful consideration, the BBC, Russell T Davies, and Bad Wolf have collectively decided not to go ahead with the previously announced Doctor Who Christmas special. This decision was not taken lightly, and we know it will be disappointing for fans, but in order to set the show up for future series, it was decided that rather than bridge the gap with a one-off special, we are choosing to push forward to invest in a long-term future of the show, which ensures that when the TARDIS lands once more, it does so in all its glory. The previously announced new Doctor Who animation series for CBeebies is currently in production, details of the tender will be announced in due course, and the BBC retains all IP in Doctor Who. BBC Studios will continue to lead the global distribution of Doctor Who, as well as licensing, consumer products, digital and immersive experiences on behalf of the BBC." That is a lot of, to be frank, bullshit. It's a lot of legal speak, a lot of just industry speak, and quite honestly, if you want a proper breakdown of everything that it suggests and everything that it says, there are plenty of videos. There are literally, I've watched dozens already of people break this down, so I'm not going to get into it. I am going to quickly just make mention about the tender, the competitive tender. That is very much just industry insider speak. Insider. The wrong word. But it is just the essential term for we are allowing other people to put in bids for producing this show, which essentially means that despite the fact that BBC is, continuing to own it, and BBC Studios will still, be the main Doctor Who group, so to speak, there is going to be a new production company. Obviously, we have had Bad Wolf under Russell T Davies, and they have been running the show. We're going to have another team, another group take over the show instead. And likely it's going to be whoever can just do it the cheapest. Let's be honest here, Bad Wolf had the backing of Disney money. We're not seeing anything quite this level of what we just saw, which, I would rather have Doctor Who that looks terrible, that at least is written well. That's personally my stance on it all. But yeah, the entire feel of this statement is essentially just, we're sorry, but we had to do... we had to make this decision. It was a tough decision sort of thing. And it's really just infuriating, especially with what we're going to get into in a moment from Russell T Davies himself. And yeah, in general, this statement is fine. In a vacuum, this is fine. It's really upsetting to me that not only are we getting what Doctor Who we did have, announced, cancelled, but there's not like a hard set... oh yeah, it's okay, Doctor Who will return in 2028, it will return in 2030, it will return in 2050. We don't have a clue. And that is really frustrating to me, and I'm really... When I first read this, and when I first saw the news in general, it legitimately put me into a state of depression. I was not in a great way for a solid few hours after reading this, and right now I'm more in a state of just annoyance that this has happened more than anything, and we'll get into what's really pushed me over the edge in that regard in just a moment. But yeah, this entire announcement, while it is good to hear that the BBC still, plans on supporting the show and, distributing and wants to make more with it, and of course it is nice that the CBB show is actually going to be happening. I can't remember the animation studio, but I know it's the guys that make Numberjacks, so it's probably going to be alright. It'll be better than the land between the world between the land and the sea. The show about the fish people. Let's just call it that. Which, I'll be honest, I still haven't watched yet, but everything I've heard from people that I trust is bad, and I have very little interest in watching the Sea Devil show. So, yeah, with that being said, this wasn't the only statement, and whilst, Bad Wolf and a bunch of other people that are now leaving the series have made some pretty nice, pretty heartfelt, goodbyes, farewells sort of thing from the show, someone who seemingly didn't get that memo is Russell T Davies. And before we get into this, I just want to throw out there that I don't think he wanted to leave. I don't think he was the party involved in deciding that this was the end of Doctor Who in its current form. I think the BBC saw the kind of damage, or at least the blame for the damage that has been done by Russell T Davies, and decided, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. So he posted, alongside a crude drawing of the TARDIS warping in on Instagram, the statement, "And so goodbye from me to Doctor Who, but hello to a big new future for the show, as the BBC announces it's putting the show out to tender. As a result, there won't be a Christmas special. We only cooked that up to guarantee a future when no one knew what would happen, but now we do know, there's no need for it. You'll have to wait a bit longer for new Doctor Who, but you'll be waiting for more Doctor Who than a one-off, so it's worth it. For the record, there was no script, I never wrote it, and no actor was ever approached to play the next Doctor. You may disagree, fine, sit in that chair and wait to be proved right. You'll wait a long time. Now I'm so excited as anyone to see what comes next. Will they keep the theme tune? Will they lose the blue box? Will they bring back the Darwin? It's all up for grabs, which is so Doctor Who, exciting and unpredictable and new. Here comes the future. Warp, warp." And I, once again, am not going to do a full breakdown of this statement, but I do want to focus in on one part that has really just stuck in my head since seeing this post initially. For the record, there was no script, I never wrote it, and no actor was ever approached to play the next Doctor. And there's more that I could get into, but I really want to just point at that section in particular. Russell T Davies, and by extension the BBC, have been consistently saying and discussing this Christmas special script. Russell T Davies gave, on multiple occasions, words and phrases that are in the script. The BBC was apparently happy or even amazed by the script that Russell T Davies had presented. So this was all lies. Either that, or Russell T Davies, out of essentially embarrassment or maybe even spite, is lying that, actually, I never worked on it. I never did anything for it. Either way, this is a truly frustrating thing to be reading. And the fact that Russell T Davies seemingly knows that, this entire situation is kind of on him. And fair enough, Disney pulling out was probably the more important factor here. But it wasn't Disney's fault that the writing and direction and general running of the show was subpar for a decent portion of this new Who. The fact that the specials with David Tennant were generally enjoyable but otherwise nothing too special, and then following that with season 1 and 2 being both a narrative mess as well as a bit of a tonally inconsistent series of episodes, really put the nail in the coffin for Doctor Who. And that is after the Chibnall era, which had already turned away a lot of people. I, for the most part, tried to stick with it. I've, gone over on multiple occasions in multiple videos the fact that, despite the fact that, maybe I stopped doing content on the Chibnall era at a certain point, I was still watching. I may not have been watching day and date, I was watching a little bit later on iPlayer, whatever it may be, but I was still invested. It took me nearly a year to watch Season 2. Well, that's probably an exaggeration, but it took me quite a while to actually get around to watching Season 2 because of how much of a sour taste Season 1 and Joy to the World left in my mouth. And as I said earlier, I still haven't watched The War Between the Land and the Sea, which, as someone who has watched literally everything, and I rewatch Torchwood and Sarah Jane Adventures frequently, I've watched K9 and Company, I'm not someone who's a diehard Doctor Who and Doctor Who only. I like all the spin-offs. But this recent era has really upset my appetite for anything in this world, and it's really unfortunate. Not to say that I'm not enjoying consuming Doctor Who content. I'm going back and watching a lot of, the original New Who. I've been watching Classic as well, which is really good. There's some really good Classic out there. I'm not going to say anything in particular, but, basically every Sideman story from Classic Who is excellent, and that's just where I'm going to leave it there. But, yeah, this entire situation that we're in right now, where we have basically known nothing for certain for a year, and now all of a sudden, oh, well, it was never going to happen, because it wasn't getting written by the writer. It was, there was no talks on who was going to replace Billy Piper or whoever was supposed to be the Doctor in this Doctor Who special. It feels like a slap in the face. It really feels like a slap in the face to everyone who has, tried to stick with Doctor Who these last few months. Through the delays and through, the speculation and rumour about cancellations and delays and, maybe the Christmas special will actually be an Easter special or whatever else. Through all this time, we at least had the belief that, we weren't being lied to. And whether we were or not, as I say, I can't necessarily believe Russell here. I don't necessarily believe that he actually didn't write it. But he is either lying this entire time, the last few months, about, this story that he's working on, or he's lying now that he never worked on it. And that's the annoying thing, is that we will never know, because Russell T Davies is the only one spiteful enough, and honestly hateful enough, within the Doctor Who sphere, to make a point like this. And this isn't intended to be a personal attack on Russell T Davies. I know it may lean that way. I really enjoy RTD's work. I think that he is one of the better TV people out there, and he has inspired a lot of things that I, have produced. But the way he has been acting over the last few years, when he finally got the reins back to Doctor Who, and this entire recent era, there's just so many issues with everything, and it topping it off with a cancelled special and a statement of, you may disagree, fine, sit in that chair and be proved right in a long time. It really feels bad. And I think, for the most part, I didn't want to make a video about this. I've been stewing on it for, the last day. It's pretty much the only thing I've been thinking about recently, and I didn't want to make this video purely because I don't want, after making the sad state of Doctor Who, I didn't want another video where I just complain about Doctor Who and bemoan that, it's not what I want it to be and stuff like that. I love Doctor Who. It's been a very important part of my life. The majority of my life. And despite everything, I was willing to continue to give Doctor Who and RTD and Bad Wolf a chance. and check out the Christmas special, check out the CBB show when it eventually comes out. And to know that the CBB show is the thing that I have to look forward to, is the only confirmed, guaranteed thing. And who knows, maybe in a few months we'll find out, oh, that's been cancelled as well. Who knows? We're in a situation where the streaming, for the international streaming of Doctor Who, is all over the place. I hear it's back on Tubi in some areas, some places in the world. I hear that it's apparently going to be on some other streaming services for the US specifically. I don't really know at this point because it's all kind of up in the air, a lot of it. But, yeah. I think a lot of it just comes down to we've been lied to either at the very end, at the bitter end, or for the last year, where we were told that Doctor Who still had a future, Doctor Who still had, this upcoming special, still had things in the works, things to look forward to, and it just doesn't anymore. I hope that Billy does come back in some regard. If not, to actually close the loop on that weird cliffhanger, just to, bring things full circle sort of thing. A lot of people have been pointing out that, New Who, in its entirety, both the original New Who and the New Who, RTD2, whatever you want to say, New Who started, the first face we saw was Rose. And whether it was Rose, or whether it was the Doctor, or whoever it is, it was still Billie Piper's face that ended the show. There's something poetic about that. But it really just doesn't feel good. I've been theory crafting a few things. I'm probably going to make another video in the near future about Doctor Who, just on the basis of, what I want to see, sort of thing. Alternatives to a true wilderness. Because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a Wilderness Years Part 2, essentially. And I feel there's a few ways they could get around that. But I'll save that for another more dedicated video where I've actually got a script written and stuff like that. Because right now I'm working from notes and press releases and stuff like that. And I don't think this is the kind of video for that kind of speculation. But with that being said, I think that's everything I just wanted to blabber on about. I've really been wanting to just talk about this. And yeah, as I said before, there are dozens of videos that break it down far more eloquently than I have. But yeah, I'm sure you can find those on your own if you really want to. But yeah, with that being said, that's going to be it from me. So thanks for watching. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you're new, and ring that bell so you never miss upload. And I promise it won't go however many months since I last uploaded. I'm actually just looking right now. I mean, I'm only a month out since my last upload, but I will try and become a tiny little bit more consistent. Hopefully with some Doctor Who content. But yeah, with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
It's been a long week. I feel like I could use a vacation. I can hardly think. It's like the worst song you've